The first thing I remember from that time, the thing that still wakes me up, is the taste. It was a cold, metallic bitterness that coated the back of my throat, no matter how much water I drank. It tasted like old pennies and chemicals. When I opened my eyes, the world was a blur. Not the soft, sleepy blur of waking up at home, but a smeared, Vaseline-coated haze. The only thing in focus was her face floating above me. My mother-in-law, Brenda. "There you are, sleepyhead," she whispered. Her smile was bright, but her eyes were like polished stones. "You just rest. Mama's here. I'm taking care of everything. I was in the recovery room, then my own private room. The gallbladder surgery, the one my doctor promised was routine, was over." I should have been feeling relief. I should have been feeling the first steps toward recovery. Instead, I felt a fog. A heavy, wool blanket fog that settled not just on my mind, but deep in my bones. I felt an exhaustion so profound that lifting my hand to the call button felt like lifting a boulder. Brenda was a nurse. A very good one, a senior RN on the cardiac floor. Or so she always reminded us. When my husband, Mark, told her I was having the surgery, she'd insisted. "Oh, absolutely not," she'd said, her voice full of that crisp, non-negotiable competence. "The hospital is so short-staffed. They'll have you in and out, but the aftercare is what matters. I'm taking a week of leave. I'll be your private nurse. It's no trouble at all." Mark had looked at me, his eyes brimming with relief. "See, Carla? Isn't she amazing? We won't have to worry about a thing." And I'd smiled. Because that's what I did. I smiled and I nodded, and I pushed down the small, cold knot that had formed in my stomach. I told myself it was gratitude, but it wasn't. It was fear. It wasn't always like this. Before Brenda, our life was simple. It was ours. Our little blue house on Poplar Street always smelled like either coffee or crayons or whatever spaghetti sauce Mark was simmering on the stove. We had 2 children. Lily, who was 5 and had my eyes and Mark's stubborn chin, and Ben, who was 2 and was just a walking, giggling ball of pure mischief. Our life was loud. It was sticky. It was stacks of bills on the counter and Lily's artwork taped to the fridge and tiny socks under the sofa. I'm an illustrator. I worked from a small desk tucked into the corner of our living room, drawing pictures for children's books. Mark was a high school history teacher, the kind of teacher who acted out the battles, and his students loved him for it. We were happy. We were that normal, messy, imperfectly happy family you see at the grocery store on a Saturday morning. And then there was Brenda. Brenda was Mark's mother, and she never let anyone forget it. She didn't approve of me, not overtly. She was never rude. No, Brenda was far too clever for that. Her disapproval was a quiet, suffocating thing. It was in the way she'd visit and refold my laundry, just to help. It was in the helpful articles she'd email Mark about childhood nutrition, with little notes like, "I noticed Lily is still so picky. Maybe Carla's schedule is just too busy for complex meals?" She'd watch me. When I'd comfort Lily after a fall, Brenda would stand in the doorway, her arms crossed. "You rush to them too quickly, Carla," she'd say, her voice soft. "They need to learn resilience. You're making them fragile." When I got the job illustrating a new book series, I was ecstatic. Mark opened a bottle of sparkling cider, and we let the kids stay up late. Brenda called that night. When Mark told her the news, there was a long pause. "Oh," she said finally. "Well, that's nice. I do hope it doesn't take too much time away from the children. They're only this age once, you know." Mark always had my full attention. Mark, bless his heart, lived in a state of gentle denial. He saw his mother as the most capable, loving woman in the world. "She just cares a lot, Carla," he'd say, wrapping his arms around me. "That's just how she is. She'd do anything for this family, and I believed him. I really did. I told myself I was the one who was too sensitive. I was the one misinterpreting things. She was a good-hearted woman. She was family. Then the gallbladder attacks started. Sharp, searing pains that left me breathless. "It's gotta come out," my doctor said, pointing to the ultrasound. "It's a simple laparoscopic procedure. You'll be in one night, maybe 2. Back on your feet in a week. A week. A week of Mark having to juggle the kids and work." That's when Brenda stepped in, waving her hands and taking charge. "I've already spoken to my supervisor," she announced over dinner, not even looking at me, just at Mark. "I'll take the week. I'll stay at the hospital with her, and I'll stay at the house for a few days after. It's all settled." I felt a sudden chill, a prickle of unease I couldn't name. "Brenda, that's too much. You don't have to. The nurses—" She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Oh, honey, those floor nurses are run off their feet. They have 6 patients apiece. They don't have time for real care. You need family. You need me." She patted my hand. Her skin was dry and cool, like paper. "Don't you worry your pretty little head. I know that hospital inside and out. You'll be safer with me than with anyone." And she was right. I was safer with her. Or so I thought. The first 24 hours in that hospital room were a smear of beige walls and beeping sounds. The pain from the incisions was a dull, manageable throb, well handled by the little button I could press. But the fog was something else. It was more than anesthesia. It was a heavy, soupy exhaustion. Brenda was a whirlwind of starchy efficiency. She arrived before I was even fully back from recovery, her crisp white nursing scrubs looking almost blindingly bright in the dim room. She had her own stethoscope. "Now let's see what they've got you on," she'd murmured, picking up my chart. She clicked her pen and scanned the doctor's orders. Her lips pressed into a thin, critical line. When the floor nurse, a young woman named Chloe with kind, tired eyes, came in to check my vitals, Brenda was polite but firm. "I've got it, dear," Brenda said, already wrapping the blood pressure cuff around my arm. "Her pressure is running a little low, 105/60. I'm watching it. I'll handle the vitals and the charting for this room. You just focus on your other assignments." Chloe looked taken aback, but Brenda had that authority, that senior nurse glare that brooked no argument. "Oh, okay, Mrs. Davis. Just buzz if you need anything at all." "We'll be fine," Brenda said, not looking up. She was meticulous. She fluffed my pillow. She held the little plastic cup of water to my lips. She sponged my forehead, and she watched my IV pole with the intensity of a hawk. "This is the important part," she said, her voice dropping to that intimate, hushed tone. "Hydration and pain management. It's a delicate balance." I drifted in and out of a restless, shallow sleep. Every time I woke, she was there, sitting in the hard vinyl visitor's chair, reading a magazine or just watching me. Mark and the kids came that first evening. My heart ached to see them. Lily was holding a drawing of our family as stick figures, all smiling under a bright yellow sun. Ben just wanted to climb into the bed, and Mark had to hold him back, his voice strained. "Mommy's resting, buddy. Mommy needs to get better." I tried to smile. I tried to reach for Lily's drawing, but my arm felt like it was full of wet cement. "She's just so tired," I heard Mark whisper to Brenda in the hallway. "It's the anesthesia, son." Brenda's voice was soothing, confident. "It hits some people harder than others. Plus, she was run down to begin with. All that work she does." I closed my eyes, the metallic taste rising in my throat again. The first real clue, the first crack in the facade, came on the second day. I was supposed to be feeling better. The doctor had said, "Day 2, you'll be sitting in the chair. Day 3, you'll be walking the halls." But on day 2, I couldn't lift my head. The nausea was overwhelming. A throbbing, sick sinus headache pulsed behind my eyes. The room seemed to tilt every time I tried to focus. I feel sick, Brenda, I whispered. My tongue felt thick, fuzzy. That's normal, honey. It's the pain medication, she said, bustling over to the IV pole. I've got just the thing. The doctor ordered some Zofran for you. She pulled a small pre-filled syringe from her pocket and slid the needle into the little rubber port on my IV line. I watched her, my vision swimming. From your pocket? I murmured. She smiled. The nurse's station is a zoo. I grabbed it when I got my coffee. It's faster this way. Now you just close your eyes. I did. I fell back into that thick, dark ocean of sleep. When I woke up hours later, the nausea was worse. My heart was doing something strange. It wasn't racing, it was thumping. A slow, heavy thud-thud that I could feel in my ears. The floor nurse, Chloe, slipped in while Brenda was down in the cafeteria grabbing lunch. Hey there. Carla, she whispered, checking the monitor. She frowned. Your heart rate is all over the place. And your pressure is still soft. How are you feeling? Dizzy, I managed. So, dizzy and sick. She looked at the IV pole, her frown deepening. The large bag of saline was running, but there was a smaller piggyback bag hanging next to it, the one Brenda had hung an hour ago. This isn't Zofran, Chloe said, touching the small bag. Zofran is usually a push. This is, She tilted her head, reading the label. This is a cardiac drip. It's amiodarone. I had no idea what that was. I just stared at her. It's a heart medication, she said, her voice tight with confusion. It's used to control irregular heartbeats. But it can also cause them. And it makes you dizzy and nauseous, and it can drop your pressure. She looked at my chart. This isn't in your orders, Carla. Did Dr. Patel come in? No, I whispered. Brenda, my mother-in-law, she hung it. She said it was for the nausea. Chloe's face went pale. In that moment, she stopped being a kind, tired nurse and became a professional. She reached over and clamped the tube to the small bag, stopping the drip. Where did she get this? I don't know, I said. My own heart was starting to hammer, this time with a cold, sharp fear that cut right through the fog. She's a cardiac nurse. On the 4th floor, Chloe's eyes met mine. And I saw it. I saw the same fear I was feeling, reflected back at me. I need to make a call, she said, her voice low and steady. Don't let anyone touch this IV. Do you understand me? I'll be right back. The door clicked shut, and I was alone. The room was silent except for the beep of the monitor and the heavy thud-thud of my own heart, which now felt like a trapped bird beating against my ribs. I stared at the IV pole, at the clear bag of fluid that Brenda had hung, the fluid she'd gotten from her own floor, the fluid she'd lied about. It's a mistake, I told myself. She's a cardiac nurse. She must have gotten confused. She mixed up her patients. It's a terrible, awful mistake, but even as I thought it, I knew. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that it was not a mistake. The metallic taste in my mouth wasn't from the anesthesia. It was from the medicine. The fog wasn't from the surgery. It was from her. My skin went cold. I reached for the call button, my hand shaking so violently I could barely press it. I didn't just need a nurse. I needed help. The world snapped into a terrible, sharp focus. Chloe and the charge nurse Susan were back in less than a minute. The door clicked open and they moved with a silent, urgent efficiency that made my stomach clench. Susan, a tall woman with short, graying hair and the kind of eyes that missed nothing, walked straight to the IV pole. Chloe went to my side, her hand hovering over my arm, checking the monitor. Her heart rate is 50, Chloe said, her voice strained. She's in bradycardia. Susan didn't say a word. She clamped the line, unhooked the small, clear bag of amiodarone and held it up to the light. She looked at the port where Brenda had injected the other drug, the one from her pocket. Then she looked at me. "Mrs. Davis," she said, her voice flat, professional. "I'm Susan, the charge nurse. Can you tell me exactly what your mother-in-law told you she was administering?" My mouth was dry. My tongue felt too big. She said it was for nausea. Zofran. I looked at Chloe. You saw it. She hung that bag, she said. She said she got the Zofran from her pocket. Susan and Chloe exchanged a look. It was a single lightning-fast glance, but it said everything. They knew. They knew this wasn't an accident. "We're flushing your line, Carla," Susan said, her voice softening just a fraction. "We're going to get this out of your system. We are not going to leave you alone until Dr. Patel gets here." Chloe was already unhooking the line, swabbing the port, and attaching a new large bag of pure saline, running it wide open. The cold fluid entering my vein was a shock, but it was a clean shock. I felt a tear slide, hot from the corner of my eye into my hair. I wasn't crazy. It was real. And then the door opened again. Brenda breezed in, a styrofoam cup of coffee in her hand. "My goodness," she said, her voice bright and airy. "What's all the fuss? Is her pressure dropping again?" I just stepped away she stopped. She saw Susan holding the piggyback bag. She saw Chloe at my bedside. She saw my face. Her smile didn't vanish. It just froze. It became a mask. "Susan," Brenda said, her voice dropping into that crisp senior nurse tone. "What are you doing with my daughter-in-law's medication?" "I was about to ask you the same thing, Brenda," Susan said, her voice dangerously quiet. "This bag of amiodarone is not on her chart. It was not ordered by Dr. Patel. And it's running." For a split second, I saw something flash in Brenda's eyes. It wasn't fear. It was annoyance. She was annoyed she'd been caught, and then she laughed. It was a small, condescending puff of air. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she said, shaking her head as if dealing with a student. "Susan, really? I'm her family. I'm also her nurse." I was sitting right here and she started throwing PVCs, a run of them. Her heart rate was erratic. "I'm a cardiac nurse. I saw the rhythm on the monitor before it even alarmed. I hung a micro drip of amio to stabilize her." She gestured to the IV pole. "It's a standard protocol on my floor. I was just on my way to call Dr. Patel and get the verbal order. I was stabilizing my patient. My family." She turned her gaze on Chloe, and it was pure ice. "And then she came in," she said, gesturing to Chloe. "Panicked. Probably never seen a PVC in her life, and has clearly alarmed my daughter-in-law for no reason." It was brilliant. It was so fast, so plausible. She was building a fortress of professional jargon around herself, but I'd heard her. My voice was a weak croak, but I used it. "No, you lied. You told me." "It was Zofran. For nausea." Brenda turned to me and her face melted into a mask of pure, sticky sweet pity. "Oh, Carla, honey," she said, stepping forward to pat my hand. I flinched. "You were so out of it. You were half asleep. You must have misheard me. The anesthesia has you all turned around." "Poor thing," she looked back at Susan. "See? She's completely confused, which is why it's a good thing I'm here. Now, this is highly unprofessional. You frightened her. I am her medical advocate. I'd like this inexperienced nurse," she spat the word at Chloe, "reassigned. And I'd like to speak to Dr. Patel. Now." Susan was caught. I could see it. She was a manager, and she was in an impossible position. An unauthorized medication versus a senior RN's professional judgment call on her own family member. "Brenda, you know you cannot administer any unordered medication," Susan said, her voice firm. "You broke protocol. Badly. I'm going to have to file an incident report." You file whatever you need to, Susan, Brenda said, lifting her chin. My priority is my family's safety, and I just saved her from a potential arrhythmia. The door opened for a third time, and my heart seized. It was Mark. He was smiling, holding a small plush bear from the gift shop. His smile died when he saw the scene. His mother standing like a righteous warrior, 2 other nurses looking grim, and me pale and weeping in the bed. What's going on? He asked, his voice full of confusion. Mom? Carla, honey, are you okay? Brenda's composure cracked, but it was an act. Her voice broke. Her eyes welled with tears. Oh, Mark, she said, rushing to him, burying her face in his shoulder. Thank God you're here. This nurse. She's accusing me of hurting Carla. Her heart was having trouble. And I fixed it. I'm her mother. I was helping her, and they're treating me like a criminal. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. Mark, I whispered, my voice desperate. The saline was clearing my head, but the fog was still there. Mark, she's lying. She gave me the wrong medicine. She said it was for nausea. It was heart medicine. It made me sick. Chloe saw it. Mark looked at me. He looked at my pale, sweaty face, my trembling hands, the slur in my voice from the drug's residue. Then he looked at his mother, strong, capable, indignant, crying in his arms. Carla, baby, he said, his voice gentle, but full of a deep, terrible disappointment. You're not making sense. You're drugged. You're confused. He looked at Susan. What did you do to my mother? She's a nurse. She's here helping. She saved her. Sir, your mother administered an unordered medication, Susan said, holding her ground. It was an emergency, Brenda sobbed. He wasn't here. You weren't here, I was. It's okay, Mom, Mark said, rubbing her back. He looked at Susan, his eyes hard. I think you've done enough. We've got this. My mother is in charge of my wife's care. We'd like you to leave. Susan looked at me one last time. Her eyes were full of pity and a warning. Dr. Patel is on his way. We will be discussing this. She and Chloe left. The door clicked shut, leaving a silence that was heavier, more toxic than any noise. I was alone. Mark was at my bedside, smoothing my hair. It's okay, Carla, it's okay. Mom's here. She'll take care of you. You just need to rest. But his eyes kept flicking to Brenda, looking for her approval. And Brenda sat back down in the visitor's chair. She picked up her magazine. She crossed her legs. She looked at me over the top of the magazine and she smiled. A small, tight, victorious smile. In that moment, I knew 2 things with absolute, chilling certainty. 1, she was doing this on purpose. 2, no one was ever going to believe me. Dr. Patel was a small, neat man who always smelled faintly of antiseptic soap and coffee. He came in, his face set in a deep frown, holding my chart. Mark stood by the window, his arms crossed, radiating a protective energy. But it was all directed at his mother. Brenda was the picture of contrite professionalism. Doctor, she said, standing up, her voice humble. I know I overstepped protocol. I am prepared for the write-up. But you have to understand, I was watching the monitor. I saw a run of VTAC. It was short, but it was there. My cardiac training it took over. I couldn't not act. She's my son's wife, my grandchildren's mother. I pushed 50 of Amio and hung a 50-milligram drip, just to keep her stable until I could page you. I was frightened. Dr. Patel looked at the EKG strip that Chloe had thankfully run when she first came in. He looked at my current vitals, which were now, thanks to the saline flush, slowly returning to normal. My heart rate was back up to 70. Her EKG is clean now, Carla, Dr. Patel said, looking at me. But this bradycardia, this 50 beat per minute rhythm, is a known side effect of amiodarone, which is what you're describing, Brenda. He looked back at my mother-in-law, his eyes sharp. You say you saw a VTACH. The monitor history doesn't show a sustained run. It wasn't sustained, Brenda insisted. It was a burst. The monitor might not have even caught it as an event. I saw it, doctor, with my own eyes. I was not going to wait for a code to be called on my daughter-in-law. It was her word against a machine's history. And she knew that nurses, good nurses, often see things the monitors miss. She was using her reputation as a shield. Dr. Patel sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Brenda, you cannot ever administer a non-ordered high-risk drug. You know this. We could be talking about a state board review. I know, sir, and I will take the consequences, she said, her voice watery. I couldn't live with myself if something had happened because I did nothing. Mark stepped forward. Doctor, my mother saved my wife. I don't understand what the problem is. Shouldn't we be thanking her? Dr. Patel looked from Mark's angry, confused face to Brenda's performance of stressed-out heroism, and then, to me, I was the patient, the one who was confused, the one who was still groggy from a drug I was never meant to have. Carla, he said, his voice gentle. How are you feeling now? Clearer, I whispered. But I was so sick and dizzy. It wasn't like that before. I stand by what I said. She told me it was Zofran. Brenda let out a small, wounded sound. Mark shot me a look. Not of anger, of pity. That was so much worse. Carla, honey, you were half asleep, he said, forcing a smile. Mom explained. You just misheard. It's okay. You're safe. Dr. Patel closed the chart. Here's what we're going to do. Brenda, you are a guest in this room. You are not staff. You will not touch her IV. You will not touch her monitors. You will not administer so much as an aspirin. Is that clear? Crystal clear, Brenda said, her voice tight. The floor nurse will be in every 30 minutes, he said to me. I'm keeping you on telemetry overnight just to be safe. We'll get this sorted out. You just rest, he left. The door shut. Mark kissed my forehead. See? All sorted. He's just being careful. He squeezed my hand. I need to go. I left the kids with Sharon next door. I have to pick them up before she loses her mind. I'll bring Lily and Ben by tomorrow morning, okay? You'll be feeling so much better. Mark, wait, I pleaded, my voice thin. Don't leave me here with her, please. His face hardened. Carla, stop it. That's cruel. My mother is giving up her week to sit in this awful chair for you. She just made a mistake trying to help you. She's upset enough. Please just apologize to her so we can move on. I stared at him. Apologize. He wanted me to apologize. The coldness that had been at my edges now flooded my entire body. I was completely, terrifyingly on my own. Okay, I whispered. I'm sorry. I'm just tired. He smiled, relieved. That's my girl. Get some sleep. He kissed his mother's cheek. Thanks, Mom. You're a saint. He left. I was alone with Brenda. For a long time, she just sat there reading her magazine. The only sound was the rustle of a page turning. The fog in my head was gone, replaced by a hyper-alert, ice-cold terror. I knew she would do it again. She had to. She'd been caught, but she'd also been defended. My own husband had given her permission. He had told her she was a saint. He had told me I was confused. She was emboldened, and I knew why. I'd seen the way she looked at me when I held Ben, the way she'd whisper to Mark, "She just doesn't have the instincts you do, son. She's not maternal. Not really. She didn't just disapprove of me. She wanted to replace me. She wanted my children if I was sick. If I was confused, if I had a cardiac event and was never quite the same, I wouldn't be a fit mother. And she and Mark would be there to pick up the pieces. This wasn't just spite. It was a plan. I needed proof. I couldn't rely on anyone else. I had to get it myself. My hand, shaking, moved slowly toward the bedside table. My phone was there, next to the plush bear Mark had brought. Brenda looked up. "Need something, dear?" "Water," I croaked. My mouth is so dry." "Of course," she said. She got up, poured a cup from the plastic pitcher, and brought it over. "Here you are." As she turned her back to put the pitcher down, my fingers closed around my phone. I unlocked it with my thumb. I slid it from the table and under the thin hospital blanket, my heart hammering so hard I was sure she could hear it. She sat back down. I waited. I waited for an hour. I pretended to drift off to sleep. My breathing was slow and even, but my eyes were squeezed shut, my nerves screaming. Finally, I heard her stand up. "I'm just going to step out," she said, her voice a low murmur. "Going to get a cup of tea. You just rest. I didn't move." I heard the door open, and the soft hydraulic whoosh as it closed. I fumbled with the phone under the blanket. My hands were slick with sweat. I opened the camera app. I switched it to video. I looked around the room. I had nowhere to put it. I saw the plush bear Mark had brought. It was a light brown, floppy-eared dog. I sat up, the pain from my incisions screaming at me. I shoved the phone deep into the soft folds of the bear's arm, angling the lens out between the stitches of its armpit. I propped the bear up on the bedside table, facing me. Facing the IV pole, it looked ridiculous. It looked like a child's toy. I heard footsteps in the hall. My blood ran cold. I hit the record button. I turned the screen brightness all the way down. I threw myself back against the pillows, pulling the sheet up to my chin, my eyes squeezed shut, feigning a deep sleep. I didn't have time to hide it better. It was all I had. I prayed it was enough. I lay there, a prisoner in my own body, listening. The silence in the room was a living thing. It was just me and her. The only sound was the quiet, rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor that she had, ironically, insisted I be kept on. It was my only witness, a steady electronic pulse proving I was stable. For now, I practiced my breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth, slow, even, a sleeping breath. But my heart was a trapped bird, beating against my ribs so fast I was afraid the monitor would betray me, that the rhythm would speed up and she'd know. I must have laid there for 20 minutes. 20 minutes that felt like 20 years. Every squeak of a cart in the hallway, every distant page, made my muscles clench. Then I heard her stand. My body went rigid. I heard the rustle of her scrubs as she moved, not toward the door, but toward me. I kept my eyes shut, forcing my eyelids to stay relaxed. I could feel her standing over me. I could smell the faint chamomile and something bitter scent of the tea she'd brought back. She was watching me, waiting, making sure I was truly asleep. Beep, beep, beep. The monitor remained steady. I was a better actor than I ever knew. Satisfied, she moved away from the bed. I heard her walk to the door and I heard the snick of the lock. She had locked us in. A new, colder terror seized me. She walked back to my IV pole. I risked a glance, a tiny slit of vision through my eyelashes. She was standing with her back to me, looking at the main 1-liter bag of saline. The one Dr. Patel had ordered. The one Chloe had hung. She reached into the pocket of her scrubs. It wasn't a pre-filled syringe this time. It was a vial. A small glass vial. And a fresh syringe, still in its sterile wrapper. My mind was screaming. Scream, Carla! Move, do something! But I knew. If I moved, it was over. She would stop. She would have an excuse. It would be my word against hers, and my husband had already chosen a side. I had to have the proof. I had to let her do it. My life, my motherhood, my everything depended on this terrible, passive, agonizing moment. I watched, feigning sleep, as she methodically tore the wrapper off the syringe. She drew back the plunger. She turned the vial over. I couldn't read the label from here. It was small. She uncapped the needle. She slid it into the rubber stopper of the vial. She drew out the fluid. Then she turned to the IV bag. She didn't inject it into the port near my arm. That would be too fast, too obvious. She was a professional. She carefully, meticulously, swabbed the small rubber port on the bag itself. The one high above me. The one where additives are mixed in by the pharmacy. She pushed the needle in. She injected the entire contents of the syringe, 10 cc's of something, directly into the bag of saline that was, at that very moment, dripping into my vein. She was poisoning my lifeline. I watched the clear fluid swirl inside the bag as the new unknown chemical mixed with the saline. And then, I watched that new poisoned mixture continue its slow drip, 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 down the tube toward my arm. A small, choked sound died in my throat. She calmly gathered the vial and the syringe, slipped them back into her deep pocket, and unlocked the door. She sat back down in the vinyl chair. She picked up her magazine. The thud of the magazine hitting her lap was the loudest sound I had ever heard. She was waiting. She was sitting there, waiting for me to get sick. Waiting for the episode she could report. Waiting for me to become confused, to slur, to... Whatever it was she'd given me, I could feel it. Maybe it was panic. Maybe it was real. But a new wave of dizziness was washing over me. A different kind. A cold, tingling numbness was starting in my fingers. My breath felt shallow. Now I had to do it now. Before I couldn't. My hand was under the sheet. My fingers found the hard plastic call button. I couldn't look at Brenda. I just stared at the ceiling, at the water stains on the acoustic tiles. And I prayed. I squeezed the button. There was no sound in the room. Just a small red light that I knew was glowing above my door in the hallway. The weight was unspeakable. Every drip I heard from the IV stand was a drop of poison. My heart was starting to feel strange, not the slow thud from before. This was a frantic, fluttering palpitation. I was sweating. A cold, clammy sweat that had nothing to do with the surgery. I heard Brenda turn a page. "You cold, dear?" she asked, her voice light, casual. I didn't answer. I couldn't. "Carla?" I heard her stand up. "My goodness, you're white as a sheet." The door flew open. It was Chloe. Her eyes were wide. "You rang, Carla? Are you—" "Oh my God, she saw me. She saw the sweat." She looked at the monitor. "Her heart rate is 140. Chloe yelled, hitting the staff assist button on the wall. "She's in SVT. What's going on?" Brenda was already in character, rushing to the other side of the bed. "I don't know. It just happened. Just like I said. She's having another episode. She's unstable. Look at her." Brenda was using the symptoms. She was narrating my attempted murder as a medical crisis. "Carla." Chloe's face was close to mine. "Carla, what do you feel?" My voice was a gasp. "The bear." Brenda's head whipped around. "What? She's delirious." "Get the doctor. The bear," I said again, trying to point. "The phone? She injected the bag." Chloe's eyes flew from my face to the teddy bear, to the IV bag, and then to Brenda. And in that instant, Brenda knew. Her face, that mask of calm, concerned competence, dissolved. It crumpled into something ugly, something desperate and rabid. "She's crazy," Brenda shrieked, just as Susan, the charge nurse, burst in with 2 other nurses. "She's hysterical. She's trying to frame me. She's always hated me." She made a lunge for the bear. "Give me that. It's mine. I brought it for her. No," Chloe screamed, grabbing the bear and holding it behind her back. "Susan, she said there's a phone in here." She said she injected the bag. Susan didn't hesitate. She looked at the IV bag, then at Brenda, who was now panting, her eyes wild. "Brenda, step away from the bed," Susan ordered, her voice pure steel. "You can't prove that," Brenda spat. "It's a post-op complication. It's anesthesia. She's mentally ill." "That's why I'm here." "Mark knows. He knows she's not fit." Susan was already clamping my IV line. "Get this line out, now. Get a new line in her other arm. And get me a crash cart." "This bag," she said, pointing to the poison saline, "is evidence. Don't let anyone touch it." "The phone?" I whispered, as the dizziness turned into a dark, roaring tunnel. Chloe was fumbling with the bear, her hands shaking. She pulled my phone out. The red record light was still blinking. She stopped the recording. She held the phone to her chest. Brenda saw it. She saw the phone. She saw the stopped recording. She saw Susan on the phone to security. It was over. The last thing I saw before I blacked out was her face. It was the face of a woman who had just lost everything. And she knew it. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the silence. It wasn't the heavy, watchful silence of before. It was a true, peaceful quiet. The room felt clean. My head was clear. The fog was gone. The thick, chemical, coppery taste that had lived in my mouth for 3 days, it was gone. I was weak. I felt like I'd been run over. But I was myself. I turned my head. Chloe, the young nurse, was sitting in the visitor's chair. Not Brenda's chair. She was sitting there, quietly, just watching my vitals on the monitor. She looked exhausted. When she saw my eyes were open, she gave me a small, watery smile. "Hey there," she whispered. "Welcome back." I looked at my arm. The IV was gone. There was a new one in my other hand, attached to a new clean bag of simple saline. "You're safe," Chloe said, as if sensing the question in my eyes. "It's over. She's gone." "What? What did she—" "Epinephrine," a new voice said. I looked toward the door. Dr. Patel was standing there. He wasn't holding a chart. His hands were clasped behind his back. He looked older. He looked ashamed. "She injected a diluted solution of epinephrine, adrenaline, into your saline bag," he said, his voice quiet, heavy. "We sent the bag to the lab. It was a high enough dose to induce supraventricular tachycardia, but low enough that it might be mistaken for panic attacks or post-op complications. Especially if you already had a history of episodes." He was quoting Brenda. "The story she had been building, she was trying to kill me," I whispered. "No," Dr. Patel said, and his voice was somehow colder, more chilling. "Not kill you. That would be too messy. She was trying to break you. She was building a case that you were mentally and physically unstable, that you were an unfit mother." The words. Unfit mother. The words she'd been planting in Mark's head for years. "Brenda Davis was arrested by the police about 3 hours ago," Dr. Patel continued, his voice flat, formal. "She was escorted from the building. Her employment is terminated, and the state nursing board was notified this morning. They are seeking an emergency suspension of her license. She will not be a nurse again. I just absorbed that. Arrested. License gone. The video from your phone was given to the police," he said. "It showed everything, the vial, the syringe. The injection into the bag. There is no ambiguity. He took a deep breath. Carla, on behalf of this hospital, I cannot find the words to express how sorry I am. I let you down. I listened to a colleague instead of my patient. I just nodded. I didn't have the energy for anger. Not yet. He left. Chloe checked my new IV, gave me a real smile this time, and left me to rest. The public part, the part I was dreading, came 2 hours later. The door opened slowly. It was Mark. He looked like he'd been hollowed out. His skin was gray. His eyes were red and raw. He hadn't slept. He hadn't shaved. He was wearing the same polo shirt from the day before. He just stood in the doorway looking at me. He looked afraid of me. Carla? He whispered. His voice was a raw scrape. I didn't say anything. I just watched him. He walked forward, one slow step at a time, and he sank into the visitor's chair. He didn't try to touch me. He didn't try to hold my hand. He just stared at his own hands, lacing and unlacing them in his lap. They called me, he said to his lap. The hospital administrator. And then the police. They had to ask me questions. He looked up, and his eyes were just broken. They showed me the video, Carla, he whispered. The video from the bear. A single dry sob ripped out of him. I watched it. I watched her. With the needle. And the bag. He put his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. She didn't even look. She was just so calm. Like she was just changing a filter. And then she sat down and picked up her magazine. He was crying. He was crying for the woman he thought his mother was. The woman who had just evaporated. I watched him. I felt a great, profound sadness, not for her. Not even for him. But for us, for the simple, messy, happy life we had. The life that was now this, she said. She confessed, he choked out. She said it wasn't... She wasn't trying to hurt you. Just slow you down. That's what she said. Slow you down. That you were always so strung out. That you weren't coping with the kids. She said. She was just trying to prove how much the family needed her. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Pleading for what? Forgiveness? Absolution? For me to tell him it wasn't his fault? She's sick, Carla. She's not my mom. She's sick. My voice, when it came, was clear. It was quiet. It wasn't shaking. She told me I was confused, I said. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. You told me I was confused. I continued, my voice just a quiet statement of fact. You told me I was cruel. You told me to apologize to her. You held her hand. And you left me here. Carla, I didn't know, he cried, his voice cracking. She's my mother. How could I? She's your mother, I said. But I am your wife. And I am the mother of your children. And I told you I was scared. I begged you not to leave me with her. And you chose. He had no answer. He just wept. He wept for his own betrayal, and that was her consequence. More than the jail time, more than the loss of her career, it was this. Her son, my husband, finally truly seeing her, seeing the monster that had been hiding behind the mask of competence and care his entire life. She hadn't just tried to poison me. She had poisoned him too. She had poisoned everything. I turned my head and looked out the window, at the pale gray afternoon sky. I was safe. I was alive. My children were safe. But I had never in my entire life felt so terribly alone. Healing. is not a straight line. It's not a moment where the clouds part and the music swells. For me, healing began with the sound of the hospital elevator doors sliding shut. Mark drove me home. It was the longest, quietest car ride of our lives. He tried twice to reach for my hand. He'd say my name, Carla, and his voice would just die in his throat. He had no words, and I had no words for him. I just watched the familiar streets of our neighborhood pass by. The coffee shop, the park, the big oak tree Lily loved. It was all the same, but I was different. I felt scoured, hollowed out. When we pulled into our driveway, I saw my neighbor, Sharon, bundling Lily and Ben into their coats on her front porch. When Lily saw the car, she shrieked, "Mommy!" She came running across the lawn, her little arms pumping, and Ben toddled right behind her, yelling, "Mommy! Mommy, up!" I got out of the car. The pain from my incisions was sharp, but it was a clean pain. It was a pain that made sense. I knelt, wincing, and Lily crashed into my chest, her arms wrapping around my neck so tight I thought I'd break. Ben just buried his face in my leg, clinging. I buried my face in Lily's hair. It smelled like grape juice and crayons. It smelled like home, and I wept. I wept for the first time, not from fear or pain or betrayal, but from a gratitude so profound it was almost a new kind of agony. I was here. I was here. I was holding them. I looked up over their small heads. Mark was standing by the car, just watching us. He was a ghost at his own family reunion. He knew in that moment that he was on the outside. This embrace was not for him. The first few weeks were a new kind of hard. Mark was attentive. He was desperate. He made me tea. He fluffed my pillows on the sofa. He took over every meal, every bath time, every middle of the night wake up. He was trying to do his way back to me. But I would wake up in the dark, my heart hammering, the metallic taste of adrenaline in my mouth. I'd see him asleep beside me, and I'd feel a cold, empty space. He was the man who had looked at me, at my most vulnerable, at my most terrified, and he had called me confused. He had told me to apologize. We finally talked. About a month after, the kids were asleep. The house was quiet. I was sitting at my drawing desk, just holding a pencil for the first time. He stood in the doorway. How do we fix this, Carla?" he asked. His voice was so small I turned in my chair. "I don't know, Mark. I go to see her," he said quietly. It's a facility while she waits for the trial. She's on medication." I said nothing. She asks about the kids. I don't let her see them." He looked at me, his eyes begging for something. And I told her I will never forgive her. For what she did to you. For what she did to me, to my memory of her. He was in therapy. He was trying to untangle the knots that she had tied in his head since he was a boy. The web of devotion that was really just control. I know sorry is not. "It's not a word that works here, Carla," he said, stepping into the room. I failed you. I failed us. I was a bad husband, and I don't know if you can, but I am so ashamed. I looked at this man, the man I had loved since college, the man who acted out history battles, the father of my children. He hadn't poisoned me, but he had held the door open for the poisoner. He had believed the lie because the lie was easier. The lie was his mother. The lie was his whole life. "I don't know either, Mark," I said, and it was the truth. I don't know if I can ever trust you. Not in that way, not to protect me. Not when I'm sick." His face crumpled. He just nodded. He knew he deserved it, but, I said, and I took a breath. You are Ben and Lily's father, and you are here. You are doing the work. You didn't run. You are. You are seeing it, and maybe that's a start. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a reunion. It was a pinprick of light. Brenda's trial was 6 months later. It was a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to aggravated assault and practicing medicine without a license. The criminal endangerment charge was part of the deal. The video was the only thing that mattered. She was sentenced to 10 years, with parole possible in 5. I was there. Mark sat next to me. He held my hand, and when I flinched, he just laid his hand, palm up, on the bench between us. A silent offering. I didn't take it. But I didn't move away either. When they let her out, she looked at me. Her face was empty. The fire was gone. The mask was gone. She was just a hollow, gray-haired woman in an orange jumpsuit. She hadn't just lost her career. She'd lost her son. She'd lost her grandchildren. She had traded everything for the idea of control. And in the end, she was the one who had lost it all. Our healing. My healing happened in small, quiet moments. It was the first time I could drink a glass of water without that phantom metallic taste. It was the first time I woke up from a full night's sleep without the dreams of IV poles. It was the first illustration I finished. A picture of a small, brave bear protecting a sleeping child. And it was, one night, about a year later, I had a stomach flu. Just a regular, boring 24-hour bug. I was miserable. I woke up at 3 a.m. and Mark was there. He was sleeping on the floor, on a pile of blankets next to my side of the bed. What? What are you doing? I whispered. He woke up instantly. I'm just here, he said, his voice thick with sleep. You were sick. I didn't want you to be alone. He wasn't trying to fix me. He wasn't trying to manage me. He was just there, bearing witness, staying awake. My hand found his in the dark. It wasn't fixed. It would never be perfect. The scar from that betrayal would always be there. But we were a new us, a broken and reglued and stronger us. We learn that love isn't just the big grand gestures. It's the quiet choice. It's who you believe when the lights are out and the world is pressing in. It's about who sits on the floor just to make sure you're safe.